Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is the third in a series of 4 Lutheran Service Builder training webinars. My name is Tim Burke and I'll be your presenter today. Just a little bit about me. I'm a software support technician here at Concordia Technology Solutions. There are 2 ways of getting in touch with us in support. Our department email address is displayed there on your screen, along with our 800 number. And that's the best way to get in touch with us, those 2 avenues. We do have a chat channel in Lutheran Service Builder, and I'll try to remember to point that out during the presentation as well, for those of you who might be viewing this video as a recording at a later date. All right. First of all, let's talk a little bit briefly about Lutheran Service Builder. For those of you who have been attending live in these presentations, you're already aware of Lutheran Service Builder, but for those of you who might be viewing that recording at a later date, Lutheran Service Builder is a web-based program. Previously, we had 2 versions of Lutheran Service Builder that were just locally installed on your PC, a computer-based program. And since then, we've come a long way, and we now have an online application which makes it much easier to network and to share and collaborate on services together over the internet. Makes it much easier to access to, where you can just log into your account anywhere you're at, whether it's at the church, at a coffee house, or in the comfort of your own home. So this is web-based. It allows churches to quickly plan services and create custom bulletin interiors. You also can export presentations, which is our topic of today, as well as playlists. And playlists is an add-on feature. If you subscribe to the Concordia Organist, you can then export out a playlist, and that will provide the accompaniment for your services, both for hymns and liturgy as well. So if your church is in need of something like that, you don't currently have an organist, that is available as a separate add-on, and that we'll discuss a little bit more in tomorrow's, the 4th installment of this training. And then Lutheran Service Builder also helps you to conform with all copyright requirements. All right, as I had mentioned, this is the 3rd of 4 sessions. The first one that we covered on Monday is service planning and global search. And that was followed with bulletins and bulletin formats, which was covered yesterday. So if you need any additional training on those 2 topics, I would definitely encourage you to view those 2 training sessions, which are posted in our resource center already. And then today's installment is for presentations and presentation formats, basically dealing with exports for PowerPoint and Media Shout 6. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then tomorrow's webinar will be covering, it's a little bit more of an advanced session, but it's going to be covering My Worship resources as well as other add-ons that are available in the application. As I said, today we'll be covering presentations and presentation formats. So first, a little bit of housekeeping that we'll take care of. We do plan for up to 75 minutes for presentation. We'll see if we can get under that today, but we allow for that much time for the presentation. And then we'll also allow for 15 minutes for questions at the end of the presentation. Now, during the presentation, all attendees are muted. That makes it easier just to get through the training, so we don't have people talking over each other and asking questions and during the presentation. But during this training, I do encourage you to ask questions throughout. There should be a little question or chat type of entry screen in the interface on your side of things, so feel free to go ahead and just type your questions throughout the training. I do have a colleague of mine, Dan, who was your presenter yesterday, and he's manning the question or chat channel today during this training, so you can enter those at any point in time, and He'll answer those for you, and those that he hasn't answered, or even some of them that he may have answered, I'll cover in that 15-minute period of questions at the end. And just as a reminder, this recording will be shared. It will be in our resource center in the Lutheran Service Builder product website. All right, whenever we give these webinars, we do make a couple assumptions. First of all, that you do have an understanding of the basics of Lutheran worship. If you don't, that is still okay. You'll still be able to gain a lot of knowledge from these webinars, but that's just from the perspective that we're speaking into the application. We also assume that you've subscribed to Lutheran Service Builder and the LSB hymn license. Most all of our examples that we give today are from the standpoint of having that subscription along with the hymn license. There are some other add-ons which we'll talk about tomorrow, but we're coming from that angle today of having the software as well as the license. And we also make the assumption that you are using the online version of Lutheran Service Builder. If you have Lutheran Service Builder 2 or you're still using the oldest Lutheran Service Builder 1, this training will not apply to those two versions. So this is specifically for the online version. If you do have Lutheran Service Builder 2 or 1 and you're watching this video, well then hopefully it will provide you some encouragement in order to make that transition to the new online version. There is no change in cost. It is simply a matter of transitioning to online Lutheran Service Builder. There's an additional online license that needs to be signed, but there's no cost in making that move. You'll just need to talk with your salesman about making that transition. And we've also made the assumption today that you have attended the first two training webinars in this series. It's not required. I realize that a lot of people may just be interested in the presentation webinar today. If that's their area of responsibility at the church, maybe you're on the sound team at the soundboard and this is your area. So that's perfectly fine too. But once again, some of the things that we'll be building on today were things that were covered in the first two sessions as well. All right, so if you haven't gotten started with online Lutheran Service Builder, you can start your free trial at any time, and we certainly encourage that. You can just navigate or go to lutheranservicebuilder.com online, and at the top of that web page, you'll see a start trial button that you can click on, and we want you to do that. So go ahead, if you haven't already, start your free trial. All right, this is the point of the webinar where we do like to get a little bit of feedback from those who are viewing. We want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. We've got just a 3-question poll that we've been doing pretty much every day, and it just helps us here at Concordia to be able to see how things might be changing from year to year when we've last given these webinars, and just to see what church workers are attending these webinars. And I realize that some of you might be watching this webinar again at a later date, so you can just ignore this section. You won't be able to tabulate your vote during this poll. But let's go ahead then and get started with the first poll question here. All right, there we go. So please select the option that most closely describes your primary role at the church. Just use your mouse on your side there and click that little white circle there in front of the different options that best describes your primary role. And we're collecting those responses right now. Got about 80% of you who have voted, so I'd like to get this just a little bit higher, maybe into the 90s, so please make your selection. All right, anyone else? Give you just another minute. All right, very good. Let's go ahead and close that poll, and then let me share the results of that. So as you can see, we've got about 64% of administrators, 12% of pastors, another 12 of musicians, and 12 of others. So it's pretty evenly divided up among that second level. But yeah, another 65% of you are administrators. So that's a good mix up. That's kind of what we expect. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question here. Let me launch that. Are you currently using Lutheran Service Builder in your congregation? And I'm mainly talking about the online version here. So if you are using it, go ahead and select yes. If not, no. And then of course, if no, but you're planning to subscribe soon, go ahead and take that option. Click on that with your mouse. We've got about 80% voting already. So let's increase that a little bit to the 90% area. All right, very good. I'm going to close that. And we've got about 96% of you who are already using that. I won't display the screen in this case or the results, but 96% and 4% of you know. So that's expected as well. And hopefully we'll get that 4% of you subscribed soon, or using online Lutheran Service Builder soon, I should say that. All right, let's go ahead. Well, I did share that result. Let's go ahead. I meant to move on to the third question. Let's launch that one. What would you consider your Lutheran Service Builder skill level to be? Expert, advanced, intermediate, novice, newbie? As we've gone through the week here, if most of you are still attending the first and the second sessions, you should begin to feel like you've got a good idea of how Lutheran Service Builder works. So you might be changing your rating here to intermediate or advanced. We're kind of heading into those areas today and tomorrow. All right, very good. Good. Almost 90% of you have responded. Let's go ahead and close that and show the results. So we've got a good portion of you who are in the 40% intermediate area and another 30% in the novice and 16% in newbies. So this is good. This training will be good for you, and I hope that you learn some good things from this training today on presentations. Let me go ahead and hide those results. All right, let's go ahead then and move on. Today's training goal. By the end of today, you will know how to prepare a complete presentation and export it from Lutheran Service Builder. The outline for today's training, we'll talk about inserting, selecting, removing elements from the presentation slides. We'll change how elements appear in the slides. We'll customize the presentation format. We'll be able to add some color that makes this a little bit more of a creative, using our creativeness that we have inside of us. That's kind of exciting. As well as exporting your presentation then out to PowerPoint or MediaShout 6. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me close the slides. And here we are on our calendar view. I've already signed in to Lutheran Service Builder here online, and I'm kind of picking up from where I left off on that first training on day one. I know Dan yesterday took you through bulletins and formats, and so it will be similar, similar to that today, but this will be more focused just on presentation slides. So you can see here our service that we had, our service plan that we had put together for the fourth Sunday of Easter. We have just a little review here first of our readings that are from the propers for that particular Sunday. We then selected 5 hymns to have available. here in the hymn area, and we talked about hymn search and being able to play a sample of the hymn. Then we also added a order of service, divine service setting 3, and then an additional rite of confirmation. We also talked about adding a couple notes here at the bottom. And so what I want to do today is we're going to start out with another service just to give you some experience with creating yet another service on a particular day that already has a service existing on that day. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the 25th here of April in this open area of the calendar date. And that brings us to this new service prompt here. We do want to create this on the 25th of April, but we can always select a different date from the drop-down. I do want to stick with the holiday of Easter 4. But once again, in the drop-down, it does display nearby holidays the week prior, as well as Easter 5, and then a couple locations that that can also be clicked on for that particular holiday. And here in the name field, I'll go ahead and just add a little bit. Let's call this maybe the PowerPoint service here. I'll go ahead and click plan this service. And there we have our service. All right, so I want to build very similar service that we had the other day. We've got, and once again, we're in our service plan view. The readings have already been chosen from the propers. I'll go ahead and add those hymns real quick. We want the hymn of the day, 709, add another hymn. We'll choose 781. We'll also choose 710, which we had the other day. And then a favorite, all hail the power of Jesus' name. And these are all hymns for the readings for the day. And then we'll go ahead just for something a little different, pick something in the other suggested hymns area. So let's go with Crown Him with Many Crowns. And then we had chosen Divine Service Setting 3. And we'd also talked about many of the other types of order of services that are available in this search column as well. And then the additional rite that we wanted to add was confirmation. So I can just begin to type confirmation there in the search field. That has been selected then, and I won't worry about any notes here at the bottom. We also did discuss that if you did want to change the date or the name or the holiday, you can click on this link, and it's the same window we saw a moment ago to create the service. And so we can change and edit this at any point in time. We do have the ability to make a copy of this service once it was totally done and organized and configured the way we want it. We could copy it and to another date, just to use something similar. And then in red here at the bottom, and I forgot to cover this in the first training, I think Dan did yesterday, but you can delete this service as well, which would then remove it from the calendar, and it would remove it here from the left side as well. All right, so we want to talk about, at this point, our presentation slides. So once we have our service plan in place, we can go directly then to prepare a presentation, which is this middle link here in the upper right corner. And so in one click, we go from plan to presentation. All right, let's talk about a little bit about the interface here. So at the top in the blue bar, we've got the cross, which would always take us back to that calendar view, that landing page type of view. Then we have these two little arrows, one circling to the left, one circling to the right. That's just a undo and redo type of action. So if you accidentally remove an item, you can undo that change with these arrow keys. So as you're editing, that might come in handy. Then by default here, when we come to presentation format view, it opens up to this document view, or kind of like a preview view of our order of service and our slides. Next to that is an insert tab, and we'll cover that in a little bit. Going across the page then is the option to move to those 5 different areas once again. So we've got the propers, the service plan, and prepare a bulletin, presentation, and playlist. If we went back to the service plan, let me just point that out. Here's the tab for service plan, and here's the propers. That's that first area that's in the list. Service plan is the second, bulletin is the third, presentation the fourth, and playlist is the fifth. So going back to presentation view, that's what we see in this drop down in the upper right corner. You can quickly go to those one of those four other areas from whatever area you're in. And then in the upper right corner, we've got this settings gear or cog wheel that we always have available there to access your settings menu. All right, below that then, since we're in this document preview view of presentation, we've got the export button here on the far left. We'll be able to export this into Microsoft PowerPoint file or a MediaShout 6 file. We'll go into that a little bit later when we do exporting. Then what's shown here is the current presentation format that we're using. So Lutheran Service Builder Online comes with two pre-configured presentation formats, basic and iron. We'll cover that in a little bit as well, but it defaults to basic at the moment. And then we've got an edit button, which I'll explain here in a bit. And then listed here is the Divine Service Setting 3 that we had chosen in our service plan. So that's shown here at the top. You can click on the drop-down arrow and choose one of those other orders of service if you'd like. But this is getting that information from the service plan by default. And then we've got a save button here, which I'll explain in a little bit. On the left side of the screen, we've got the slides all lined up. This is just like PowerPoint. So it's like a slide rack here, and we can just scroll down all of the slides that have been created for your particular order of service. Excuse me. So what you'll notice here in your order of service is that for every service element, there is a slide that is created. So first of all, here we've got a heading of the confession and absolution. So if we click on that slide here on the left, it will then preview that slide in the main part of the window here. So we see that it's the confession and absolution. And as you click on each of these slides or each of these service elements, you'll see that another tab appears at the top as well, showing which element of the service has focus or which slide you've clicked on. So you've clicked on a heading slide. And for this particular element, you've got tools that apply just specifically to that element. So we can either move this slide or delete it. Those are the two options for a heading slide. I could just take this slide, click on it, click and hold, and I could drag it to another position to move it, or I can use the move option button by clicking move, and then as you slide your cursor down the screen, you'll see that there's a little blue line that's like a placeholder for where you want to move that slide. So that would make it much easier if you were moving a slide to a completely different part of the service. You can easily scroll somewhere and put that line where you want to insert that slide from above, and that works much easier than trying to click on the slide and then trying to move it, and it's hard to get it to scroll down. Just much easier to use the move button. The next slide in our succession is the hymn of invocation. So I click on that slide, you'll see the tab then changes from heading to hymn of invocation, and it then brings up the hymn search column on the right, as it did in bulletin view, as well as in our service plan search column as well. So you'll notice here at the top of the search panel that our service plan hymns are already grouped together here at the top, making them easily accessible. Those are the 5 hymns that we had planned to use in this service, and so it brings it to the top. But you'll notice that underneath, it still is showing the hymn of the day for Easter 4B, shows the hymns for the readings as well as other suggested hymns, as we saw. And then you can still browse all hymns by clicking on that link, or look at other suggestions from the prior Easter 3 week or the next week, Easter 5, or you can just simply type in a hymn number here in the search field at the top to choose a hymn as well. Let me go back to our hymn of invocation and our service plan. So let's see, the first hymn that I had here is the hymn of the day. So let's maybe start the service out with something big like Crown Him with Many Crowns. So I'll click on Crown Him, and you'll see that immediately the hymn then gets populated here in our slides, and it expands additional slides for the verses that we have. And because I've clicked on that hymn and it's designated now, it then adjusts the tools that are available for this element. So you'll see that we can delete the hymn, we can move it to a different place, we can edit it. We've got the ability to choose stanzas. So when you click on the drop down, you've got your 5 stanzas here. We might want to sing all 5 stanzas of Crown Him here in the beginning. So I'll go ahead and keep them all checked. Then we've got 3 buttons here, all for the formatting of that hymn. Right now, we've just got the text shown. You can also choose to show the melody. And so you'll see then for each of the 5 verses that we have, there's a slide for each verse. And if I clicked on this one, you'll see the verse or the stanza is 2 now. And so it's showing the each stanza and melody. Now, you often get questions about melody, that some churches would like to show the 4-part harmony, and I would like that too as well. But right now, each of these hymn slides, and when you're adding melody, these are called engravings. They're image files. And so all of these engravings have been, in some ways, painstakingly set up so that the words fall directly under each of the notes and spaced apart accordingly for all of those notes. And so in order to add 4-part, it would require new engravings being made for every hymn, every stanza, etc. And that is a big job. We are taking feedback on that, though. A lot of churches have requested that. So we'll see how that turns out over the years. But I just wanted to explain that that's why only melody is shown in these engravings at the moment. And then also we can select the none option here, which would then just give the hymn number and the hymn name on one slide, no text and no melody. And so that option is there as well. But I'm going to go ahead with the text on this one. I believe sometimes for projecting on a screen, that's just the easiest way and the most readable, and just works very well for presentations. But that certainly is a decision that you'll have to make as a church. The last option here on the toolbar then is for captions. You can choose to show the caption of the hymn on all slides. That's what's currently selected, or maybe only on the first slide. So if I click first, then you can see here on the slide rack on the left side that the title has been removed from stanzas 2, 3, 4, and 5, and now only appears on the first slide. We could have it separate from the hymn. So in this case, it shows one slide with the hymn number and the hymn name, and then it drops into the 5 verses on the following slides. Or you can choose not to show the title or the hymn number and the hymn name at all, and it will just go into verses. So those are decisions that you'll need to consider. I'm going to go ahead and leave it with all at the moment. All right, let's go ahead then and continue down our slides. The next slide we get to is a rubric slide. So you might, this is just a direction for the congregation to stand. I wanted to show that you can just edit these slides right on the screen here. So we could change that to please stand, and that has been then edited. The next slide is another rubric, and this is saying that the sign of the cross may be made by all in a remembrance of their baptism. And so this is one of those things that is part of the liturgy, and so we do provide a slide for that since it is part of it. But this type of slide is one of those where by the time the guest or the person in the congregation is reading it, everyone else has already done the sign of the cross. So it might be one of those slides where you just leave out this instruction. So we could click on this and then use the delete button here at the top, and we'll just remove it from our slide reel. The next one is for the invocation. So the invocation has the options of delete, moving, edit, text, none. None would just be the invocation, but since there is a response, you do want to have that on the screen. And then the ability to change your captions as well. We talked about that already. The next slide, the exhortation. So in this particular one, what you'll notice when I've clicked on it, we've got, again, the same tools here at the top, but you will notice on the right side that it does allow you to choose other versions of the exhortation. So if you wanted to pull in the exhortation from Divine Service Setting 1, 2, 4, or 5, you could simply just click on one of these. I'll click on Divine Service Setting 4, and it changes the exhortation to that particular divine service. But we could go back to the one for Divine Service Setting 3. It's listed here by itself at the top, and that would put the other one right back the way it was. So we'll continue to go down the slide reel. Kneel and stand, you can leave it the way it is, or maybe there's a specific you want them to just stand, so you could add please stand if you'd like. Adjust those any way that you would like to see them. Silence for reflection on God's word is another rubric. Then we come down here to the confession of sins, and you'll notice here in the slides on the left that there is this blue line that's showing that there is an option. So I did want to just I've got my Lutheran Service book here, and I'll zoom in here on, there we go. And so in the Lutheran Service book, you might be used to seeing a left side and a right side option. And that is what this blue line is signifying, is that there is an option. So you can click on the blue line or the blue triangle, and that's going to then expand to the other side of the Lutheran Service book, that option. So this is where then the confession of sins is just a little different, and then they have the declaration of grace. So if you wanted that option, you can just click on one of those slides, and it then changes out that confession of sins for this order of service that you have. We can click on the declaration of grace, and that exists then here in the slide presentation. Or I can click on the options again, and we can go back to the one that it defaulted to when we first got here with the absolution. So that's what the options group, the blue highlighting here on the left, just presents you with those options. We've got another rubric here, and then we've got a heading. So this is one that is underlined. I can tell that that's a heading as well. So you might choose to take the heading out. Certainly that option is available here with the delete and the move at the top. All right, and then we come to the introit. So let's click on that slide. Once again, just reminding you that the tab appears here at the top for the introit, but now you'll notice a whole different row of some additional tools that are available. We see the common delete, common move, and edit. Over here on the left, we got our captions again on all slides. We've got text and none, but then we've got this button here for pointing. And right now, pointing is already selected. So we have I am the good, there's a vertical bar, shepherd with the asterisk. And so those are the pointing marks. Those are there by default at the moment. That's how we have it set for this particular presentation format. That can be changed on a global basis, but you can also change it here specifically just for the introit by clicking on the button. You'll notice that by default it's grayed out, or I shouldn't say grayed out, it's just gray, showing that the button is depressed. If we click on it again, it kind of depresses or unclicks that button, and the pointing now is removed. And so just clicking on and off this button will either add pointing or remove it. So if we have pointing in there, which is by default, we also have the ability to choose a psalm tone. You can click on the drop-down arrow, and there are the I guess, the standard psalm tones A through K that are available. And you can choose any one of them. If you click on A in this example, it does add the psalm tone here at the top. You can kind of see on the left side. I know it's going to be small on your screen probably, but you get an idea just by seeing some notes here at the top. And it does shift some of the words down to other slides. So those are the things that you'll just need to consider. Those can be edited later in PowerPoint as well if you wanted to shift some of that around. But adding still more content to your slide, like a psalm tone, may change a little bit of the makeup of those slides. I'll go ahead and leave that psalm tone in there. And then I did also want to show that right now there are different templates here. It might be better to show, let's see, the templates on a different slide that maybe would be more appropriate, one of the readings. So let's go ahead just with the intro, the way it is, followed by the Gloria Patri. The blue option bar is there, so I just clicked on that, and after the Gloria Patri, there is the option for the psalm with an antiphon and an entrance hymn. So that would be the optional path that you could take. I'm just going to keep it with the one that's there by default, so I'll go ahead and click on that again, and we've got that set. So let's move on in our slides then to the Kyrie. When I click on the Kyrie slide and we see the preview, once again, we've got our toolbar buttons that are appropriate for the Kyrie. But you will notice that we do have, besides text, now we have a couple of other buttons here. Melody. So if we add the melody to this, it will show us the melody for that particular service element. But there's another one here, setting. And so in this, for this example here, we do provide some 4-part harmony for the liturgy elements. Again, not the hymns, just the liturgy elements, where you could choose setting to get that 4-part harmony if you'd like to have that. Other than that, there's just none, so it would just show a Kyrie slide. But you can choose to show the text or melody. I might just add some melody for some variation here. And then once again, I do want to point out that clicking on and having this Kyrie slide in the preview window does give you these options on the right of being able to select other versions for the Kyrie. And so those can be clicked on if you'd like to swap it out for something else. All right, then we get to the Gloria in Excelsis. In this particular one, let's see. We have a few other buttons. We've got the melody, once again, and then we also have the setting, the 4-part harmony. But now we have also got a couple other additional buttons, the text with setting. So in this case, the pastor might speak the part, Glory be to God on high. And then the congregation with the letter C sings it with the setting, the 4-part harmony. Or maybe you still like this version, but you just want to show the melody, not the 4 parts. So here in this, clicking that button will show the pastor says, Glory be to God on high, and the congregation responds with that melody. And so there are additional slides for the Gloria in this case, and they'll all be text and melody at this point. I'll go ahead and leave that in our succession of slides. And then we come down to the next set of slides, which is, I believe, the salutation and collect of the day. So that just changed here. When I clicked on it, it would then also, so I could take either one, Easter 4, 3-year lectionary, or click here just in that caption area, and it will change to salutation and collect of the day if you'd rather have that. And let's see. I'll go ahead and keep it as salutation. And then we get to another rubric. Again, you could always change any of these rubrics with maybe please be seated instead of sit, if you like that instead. And then we get to one of the readings. And let's bring up something here just for variety. Let's go ahead and look at our insert option. So before that first reading, we might want to insert the children's message. That might be a place where you include a message for the children who are there in the sanctuary with you on that particular Sunday. So let's go ahead and click insert. You'll see in this toolbar that you're able to pick from a number of different selections, rubrics, headings, captions. We can insert a hymn, insert another reading, insert a prayer, insert an element, and insert a right. In this case, I'm just wanting to insert a slide that would just let the congregation know that we're going to have a children's message. So I'm going to choose a caption slide. That's what's listed here, and I clicked on it to select that. And then as I move my mouse down the slide reel, you'll see that a little blue placeholder gets put, and I want to put it right here in front of the reading. And so that actually didn't get where I wanted it. Well, let's go ahead and change this to be children's message. All right, so there we've got our slide. We should be able to move that then here. For some reason, that is not moving for me today. And it might be because that rubric is expected with the first reading. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but let's go ahead with this, keep on going through our training. So we've added an additional slide for the children's message. If you wanted to add a little directional rubric with that, having the children all from one age to another age to come up front for the message, you could add it to this screen as well, although the caption, it would be in the same size type that the children's message is here, where with a rubric, you could maybe make it italics under settings. But we've added, this is just an example of inserting or adding another slide into your slide reel. All right, and then we come down here to the readings. So this is a good place to show our templates as well. I've clicked on the reading slide, which then previews it in the center. You've got your readings here then on the right, where you could search for yet a totally different scripture than those that are supplied in the service plan, in the propers. But for this particular reading, let's look at this option here, a different tool in the toolbar for the template. Right now, it's using the standard response. If we look at the dropdown, the standard response is just content, and then it ends with, this is the word of the Lord, thanks be to God, on this last slide here. Let me go ahead and bring that last slide up, showing you how that works. So the reading kind of covers over 2.5 slides within the response at the end. Now, if I wanted to use one of the other responses, I've got a Tim's template here that I just did for an example for a customer or for a church one time. But let's go to the ones that are listed here by default, the daily office response. So if I clicked on that one, then that changes to, oh Lord, have mercy on us, thanks be to God. Or if I'd want to go with a template for the introduction, with introduction for the Old Testament. So if we go back to our first slide here, and this is something you wouldn't want to do, but this then adds the instruction for the Old Testament reading. The Old Testament reading is from Acts chapter 4. So don't ever do that. But we've got then introductions for the epistle. The epistle is from Acts 4. We've got with introduction for the Holy Gospel. And so you can see how you can use these different templates to include the introduction to the readings, depending on what you've selected here on the right, or if you searched for your own scripture verse, you can then add an introduction for that particular element. I'm going to go back here just to the standard response, and we've got that then in our slide reel. Going on from there, we've got the psalm with an options box of including the gradual instead. We've got another reading. We've got stand here as a rubric. We've got the Alleluia. where if we clicked on that, the options group shows different options for that particular element, the verse, and then there's a little warning light, warning symbol here where this tract is usually omitted during the Easter season. So you will see little notifications in the slide reel as well, just alerting you that this is normally omitted if you took that option. We're going to go ahead with just the default Alleluia here. We do have the ability to add melody or the setting, 4-part harmony in this case, since it's a liturgy element. And then we get here to the gospel, and this is a good example of having the words of Christ in red. And so this is an option that we'll talk about in our formats here in a little bit. But so you may want this in red, you may not. It's totally up to you. It kind of depends on your background. If once we get into adding background color, maybe the red would clash with that. So those are all things that we need to consider. But right now, I'll go ahead and leave the words of Christ in red. And then we get down to the Nicene Creed, or the option of the Apostles' Creed, or the option of the Athanasian Creed. Go ahead and keep the Nicene Creed there. And again, just clicking on that slide here gives options of other common elements that you could always put into your service as well in that place. Let's continue down. Then we have a rubric here of sit again. Now we've got another hymn, the hymn of the day. Clicking on that slide brings up our hymn search and my service plan hymns. I knew that the first one I chose was the hymn of the day, so we'll go ahead and click on that one. It puts the text on the screen. We can choose to add melody if we'd like. I think I added melody in the first hymn, so I'll go ahead and leave just the text for variation, for variety's sake. Maybe we'll only, I see there's 6 hymns or 6 stanzas, so we'll take 2 and 3 out. Just kind of show you some options there of removing some of the stanzas, and the slides will adjust appropriately. So we've got stanza 1, we've got stanza 3, stanza 5, and stanza 6. And then we've got the sermon slide. And once again, you could just click on the slide in the preview window and put a title for this resurrection power, and add that title. I just click away from the slide, and then it will also update here in the slide reel on the left. So we've got sermon with the sermon title. And then as we go just through these other slides, this is the same that we've kind of been going through. Please, rubrics, the offertory. We have options here of melody and setting as well. You've got some more rubrics, the offering. And then you'll notice here that in our service plan, we did add a rite of confirmation. And so I did that on purpose so that we'd have this come up in our slide reel. You can see that the slide has a little bit of a green background, including these 2 buttons, insert the rite here and dismiss. Now, our programming team has put the rite where it would, I guess, be on a standard basis, be put into an order of service. You could always move wherever you would want this rite to be by clicking and dragging it, or as we have encouraged you to use the move button here at the top. But if you wanted to insert it here at this appropriate place, all you'd need to do is click on the green button, insert the slide, or insert this right here. And so you can see that between the offering, the rubric, and the prayer of the church that's coming up, it did insert the rite of confirmation right here. Now, at the moment, it's just a slide with the word confirmation on it. But you'll notice here at the top, and if we refer to the tools that are appropriate for this element, we do have now a box, a drop-down box here of the rite, which we could always insert a different rite if we'd want to, but I want to keep it with confirmation. It's appropriate for this time of year in April. But you'll notice that there is a contents button. And right now that contents button is not depressed. So that's why we're only seeing a title for this rite. But if I clicked on the contents button, then the whole rite of confirmation then is expanded and slides are created for that rite. So here we have the pastor addresses, I'm not even going to take a stab at pronouncing that correctly. And then we've got the confirmation address done by the pastor, and down here the profession of faith. So it just adds all parts of that rite of confirmation into your service just with one click. If we went back up here to confirmation and I clicked on contents again to remove it, then it just collapses that whole rite, and maybe that's all you want to have on your PowerPoint or your presentation, I should say. You might be using Media Shout, but you would just be showing the confirmation during that part of the service. But you can include the contents. Please be aware of that. Then going down our slide reel, we've got the prayer of the church. So in this case, this is the LCMS prayer of the church that is released on a weekly basis. We covered this a little bit in the first training. Let me go back here to our gear and go to account settings. Here under account settings, we've got some additional content subscriptions, and this is the free Let Us Pray subscription that we offer you, and it's being automatically included in our service because we have this box checked, include automatically. And so because of that, that's why in our PowerPoint presentation or our presentation slides here, it is all listed out for us, and it's up to date. It includes that subscription. You can then fill in the names. It just gives a little placeholder here that you'll use for names. And I think that's just a real nice feature there to include that Prayer of the Church subscription. Beyond that, we have the service of the sacrament. And again, this is just the same things that we've covered already, different tools for the different things you click on. Options group here in blue, the Lord's Prayer. And there are different melody and settings. Well, let's see, that might have to be for the Lord's Prayer. Oh, yeah, it is. So it does include that. Let's get back here. I think it moved my spot. Here we are. Lord's Prayer, the words of our Lord. Just going down these a little bit faster since it's just kind of repeating what we've done. Then we've got the distribution, the rubric here. And then you may or may not put this here in your slide presentation. These are the words that are spoken when you're up at the altar receiving communion, and so most people wouldn't be able to see a projected screen at that point. So that might be something that you remove from your PowerPoint or your slide reel here. And then let's go ahead and click on our distribution hymns. We'll go with, let's see, I haven't used We Give Thee But Thine Own, and look at stanzas. We'll just do maybe 1, 4, and 6. And so those slides have adjusted. We've got a second distribution hymn. Let's see, I forget if there's a hymn here. Yeah, there's a hymn to depart too. So a second distribution hymn, we'll do The Lord's My Shepherd, I Not Want. Look at stanzas, maybe 1, 3, and 5 there. Got another rubric. Post-communion collect, salutation, got the benediction, still some of the same options here, tools at the top, options on the right. We got our last hymn here. We'll go ahead and do, let's say I clicked on one of the hymns I've already used just by accident. You'll notice that now in my slides here on the left, it does give me a little caution sign. This hymn is used more than once in your service. So that will alert you if you've accidentally clicked on a hymn for a second time. So we want to go to All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name. And that looks good. There's 7 verses there, so we definitely wouldn't be singing maybe all of those. Let's do 1, 5, and 7 just to keep things short. And then here at the very bottom is the acknowledgements. So This particular slide is needed for legal reasons. It just shows that acknowledging the ESV Bible that's used. And this, the ESV, we get questions on this from sometimes through our tech support line, people wanting to use the NIV or a different version of the Bible. But the ESV is used in our Lutheran Service book, as well as the altar book, the lectionaries. It's used across the board in all of this printed material. So we do want to keep consistent with that. You'd hate to have the pastor or assistant pastor reading from one of the lectionaries and reading in ESV while you have an NIV displayed. And then in addition to that, since we're just talking about consistency across the board, using different versions of Bibles also have copyrights to them. And so we have at Concordia have the ability to use the ESV version. And so that's what is used here in online Lutheran Service Builder as well to keep things consistent. So I just wanted to mention that as well. So at this point in time, we've got through all of our slides. We've created our order of service. I can go back here to the documents view, and we're done editing in this case. So what we've done here, let me go back to our slides. We've started with, or we've created this order of service right now in our slides. And what we started with originally in our service plan was the choice of a liturgy, as well as some of the resources we would use, the readings and the hymns that we selected as a group. And now we've kind of merged them all together in this order of service. So now what we're ready to do is then go from having done liturgy and our order of service, we now want to add a format, which will then equal our whole presentation altogether. So let me go ahead back to our slides. Let's talk about formats. Well, let's do this. Let's just go ahead and export this to PowerPoint. It's going to take just a little bit to create that PowerPoint slide file, and it has here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. We'll open that up in PowerPoint. Slide PowerPoint over from my other screen here. And so we have PowerPoint open now. It looks very similar to the way online Lutheran Service Builder does, and we wanted to do that on purpose just to have some consistency. We've got our slides here on the left. Clicking on those gives you the preview in PowerPoint. You can see some of these slides here where we added some of the melodies, or in that case, the psalm tone. Go back up to the top here. Oh, maybe I didn't add the music here for crowning with many crowns. But that's listed. Just where I'm reviewing these slides here on the left, just seeing how everything is kind of composed on the slides. You'll see occasionally there's some white space to some of these, like you might think the Gloria could be put on the same slide as this introit, but these are, you could do that here in PowerPoint. You could select the text from the Gloria Patri and move that in then to the slide above, as well as its caption. But in some cases here, just having the slides separated by service elements just even helps the worshiper to keep things separated in their mind, knowing that you're moving from one element to another. But that certainly is things that you can consider and change here in the PowerPoint presentation. We've got the Gloria in Excelsis. Like here, the salutation and collect of the day. And then the second slide is just the amen. You could certainly go ahead and in this particular slide, grab the amen and bring it up to this slide. You might even be able to, adjust this a little bit in order to put the amen on this slide as well. So that little bit of changing, editing, tweaking can be done here in PowerPoint. What we do is we've got a file that we try to, they are a slide presentation that we try to interpret in the same way that PowerPoint does, but we don't always get it right. So programmatically, we may not interpret it exactly the way that PowerPoint does, and then plus PowerPoint has updates and they change things. Microsoft does from time to time with different versions. So all of that stuff comes into play. We just do the best that we can in interpreting it, and then hope that you are able to work with it then within Microsoft PowerPoint to maybe make some of those fine-tuning adjustments that are needed. And so here we have this PowerPoint presentation. We've exported it out to PowerPoint, and it's basically black words on a white background. The rule of thumb that's often used is if you're going to project something onto, like from a projector onto a surface, that you might choose light backgrounds and have dark lettering. And then for those times when you're presenting a backlit presentation, like if you have TV screens at the front of your church and that's all backlit just like your phones are, you might choose or prefer to have a dark background with light than text and font. And so that's what I want to cover next, is the format. Let me go ahead and close this slide presentation. And we're back here in online Lutheran Service Builder. I did want to point out, since we are talking about exporting presentations, that there is a Media Shout 6 option. We do know that I think it has moved on to Media Shout 7, and some of you churches might have 7. We haven't had or haven't updated our export feature here at this time. We have just a small number of churches that use Media Shout. In fact, we wouldn't mind if you just let us know, even in the question and chat channel there in your interface, if you are using Media Shout 7. That just kind of lets us know what kind of users are out there, or how many churches are out there that are using Media Shout 7, or maybe you're using some other manufactured presentation like Pro Presenter or something. We'd like to know that. But at the moment, our 2 exported formats are PowerPoint, which is the most common and the majority of you use, as well as Media Shout 6. So just be aware of that availability there. All right, so let's talk about PowerPoint, or let's talk about presentation formats. We're here back in our service for the 4th Sunday of Easter, and our document tab is clicked on, and we have that option we talked about with the presentation formats. Now I can click on the drop down, and these 2, Basic and Iron, are the ones that come with Online Lutheran Service Builder by default. And so right now we're in Basic. If we chose the Iron, which is another default, you can see how that has changed. Now it's put a background image on each slide, and then it's changed the font to kind of a whitish grayish kind of font. And that's just the default presentation that is available, and you may like this. Sometimes some of the symboling here on the left side may interfere with it, so you may or may not like that look to your slides. But we can, well, unfortunately, there's not a way. We've had questions like, can we have the same slide background with the symbol here on the left, but change the background from gray to blue? Unfortunately, we can't do that, because this is actually an image that's been uploaded to the Iron presentation format, and we can't change, well, we don't have an image change for that in all of the colors, the possible colors that could be selected. But what we can do is edit or create our own formats, like I did here with some of these other 3, and I'll show those in a little bit. But the Basic and Iron are the 2. We can create a new presentation format or edit the current one just by clicking on this edit button. and that will take us to the same place if we click on settings and went to presentation formats. Both of these paths will take us to the same place. I'll go ahead and use the menu here since I'm right there. And that takes us to this presentation format. You might call it a maintenance screen. It shows the list of formats that you have. Like I said, you might just have 2 in yours right now, but as you customize and create your own, you'll begin to have a longer list here, and this will just turn into a scrollable list. So you can have as many different presentation formats as you want. Some churches create a new one every single week, so you might have 52 different presentation formats. At the bottom in the lower left corner, we have some action buttons here. There's the new format, and when you click on that button, then you're creating a new presentation format based on either basic or iron. Those are the 2 that are there by default that we build from. So we'll choose that in a moment. You have the ability to copy this format. So if there's one that you like that you've created and you want to copy it and then just change it ever so slightly for the following week or for the month of April or May, you can copy it and then tweak the copy and name it a little bit different from the others. And then you can also delete any format. So feel free to play around with these formats, and you know that you can always delete the one that you've come up with. I'm going to go ahead and start with a new format. We're going to base it off of basic. You can see that it's just added another format here on the left. I can click on that name and we'll just call it the webinar basic format. That way I know I used it here in the webinar. So right now, this is the same thing as basic here at the top. It's just copied it, and that way I'm not messing at all with this default one, basic, and changing it. I might just want to refer back to it because it's a good default one to go to. But know that if you happen to change this one by accident or you delete it by accident, you can always just click on new format based on basic, and when it creates that new format based on basic, you can change the name to basic and it's just going to be the same as this. So feel free to play with that. All right, so we've got this basic presentation format here. Now I want to direct your attention over here on the right side. We've got 3 tabs for style, layout, and content. Style is going to be dealing with things of the formatting of the slide, like the background colors, the different sections, the fonts and character size, the paragraphs, the spacing behind or above paragraphs, the left and right margins, the spacing between lines. All of that is here under slide or under style. Then we've got a layout tab that talks about the slide size. So that would be adjusted according to the TV type monitors that you might have in front of your church, or the margins of the layout of all these slides and how much space to put around the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. And then the content itself just allows you to select from the different parts of the liturgy. So while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and click on include all headings, all rubrics. I want all of these things just to be available for us in this example at the get-go. I want to come here to layout, and let's see. Let's go with a slide size of, I think it's 1080. Is that right? Oh, let's see, one of my wide ones here. Let me look at that. 1080 by 1920. 1080, there we go, by 1920. Let me get that set up right. So this is a common slide size. Again, it's best to check with your monitor, your TV monitor in your church if you've got those up in the front, or whatever size screen you have. You will want to match that here under layout, first of all. And you'll see here now in the preview window that the slide that was a little bit more like a block or square is now turned into more of a rectangle. And I wanted to do that just with this example here in creating this presentation format. Let's go back to the style option or the style tab. So here we have a white background slide, but we want to add some colors. So I click in the color circle here, and it gives us a color spectrum. This thin column here on the right is kind of a slide scale. I can slide the scale down, and the square on the left then becomes a little area where I can pick colors. And wherever I click in this block will change the different shades of the color red. And now once I even have the little target here in the square where I might want it, I could still then slide this slide scale down through the colors, and you can see just the different backgrounds. You might want to go with like a bluish background going into the purple area or back to the red. Let's go with maybe something that's a little bit blue, but maybe I want it a little darker. I do like the blue. Let's maybe make it a little bit lighter. So let's just kind of go with that. That's going to be our background. And then we can add an image. I'll show you that in a little bit. It's basically clicking the upload button and then finding the image on your computer that you want to use as a background. Then what we have here is the different sections of the slide as it pertains to the service. So you've got parts of the service elements that are body, parts of them that are heading, captions, rubrics, and copyrights. And what we have here in this preview window, it is not your service. This is just a set of slides that will show these different sections, body, heading, caption, rubric, in different slides here, just for you to base the changes that you're making off of. And so you're not, using anything that you've selected in the service, but you are seeing, in this case, a heading. This is a heading that is underlined, so I would need to go to the section for heading. Heading uses the Verdana character at 52 point, but since I've changed the size of my slide, I might want to increase that. So I can click the up arrow and you'll see the preview changing accordingly. I could just go ahead and highlight the number and put in 80 and it changes. I could take the bold off. I could make it italic. I could take the underline out. In this case, since we've got a darker background, maybe I'll want to click on the color circle and go to white. Or maybe we'd like to maybe make that a different color here. I can click anywhere in the block and then we can see what kinds of, as I slide that down, what I might like for all of my headings. And so let's maybe go with, well, that's not too bad right there actually. So this might be a way of changing your heading to be bold and italic with a pink background or maybe an orangey background. You can then come to the paragraph here and it's left justified. You can center the heading in the center or right justified. We'll go ahead with left. You can, in this case, some of these spacing won't really do much for us here under heading. It would be better just to see something with a paragraph. So we'll use that in a little bit. And then other options, text before, text after. Let's just go ahead with that. So that's our heading. Now let's go to a slide that has a caption. So let's go ahead and go to caption. And again, we can either stick with that Verdana font, we can increase it. Let's just say we go to 70. And then that is a caption there. So that's why we saw that increase, but not the text. The text is considered body. That's the body section. So let's go to that, to the body, and let's increase this maybe to 60. Or again, you can use the arrows just to whatever looks right to you. And then we can also change the lettering of the text maybe to white. We could go back to the caption and change the text color of that one. I think we had targeted something in there, and I think that's about what, yeah, that's about the same here between our heading and our captions. So let's continue to go with that. And then here you'll notice is a little copyright. So we could go to that section and we might say that the copyright we want to be white as well. So that shows up, and it could be maybe a little bit bigger, so we'll just double it in size, 44. We've got a rubric here, so we could go to the rubric section, change that. Ooh, that's a little bit too, let's see, maybe the rubric in yellow, just for something different. Italics is good. Maybe we wouldn't need it bold. Maybe we would want that centered. And let's see, coming down here to the invocation. Now here's some type here, and we've got a caption at the top. We've got the body. And now this is where some of that indenting could come into play. If we increase the space before a paragraph, you can see what it's doing there in the preview window. All of these were originally at 0. The space underneath a paragraph, we could increase that. And so in this case, it's putting more space between what was here at the top and the next paragraph. All of that adjusting can be done right here. And we can cause the margin here on the left to increase if we needed more space there, or move it in. Let's just go to 5. There we go. And then that brings in the width a little bit more. So all of those changes, I'll show you something there where I had to change the width on the right a little bit in a different format. You can make all of those adjustments. Once you have your format or the styling the way you want it, we can go to layout. We've already changed our slide size to match our monitor in the front of the church. I'm not going to make any changes to the margins at this point, but you get how those controls are working. We can go back here to content, and here are some of those global settings that I talked about earlier. If you just were not wanting to have any of the headings show up at all, you could just remove those, and the heading slides would all just be removed from your slide reel. If you didn't really want any of the rubrics to appear, you could click those off if you didn't need them. And that's kind of how the basic is set up by default. Then we've got all hymns. You want all hymns to be visible. And as a global setting, instead of having to go into a service and having to click on those buttons to add melody all the time, if you just wanted to make sure that all hymns had melody there by default, you could then go ahead and make that selection here in the content of your presentation format. And then every time hymns show up, they'll just always have melody there. You could still take the melody out when you're within the slide, the order of service that you're developing. You could still take it out on an individual basis there, but just from a global standpoint, the defaults are set here. You can also choose to have the caption placement be on every slide, the first slide separate or none. We kind of talked about that control on each of the slides, but here you can set it globally. The caption format, right now we have the name. Let's see, let's go to, whoops. Let's go to maybe this. We've got the name invocation. We've got the, well, that's not a good place to do that. Let's do this hymn. Name is hymn number and name. The role is just hymn of invocation in case you wanted to default to that, or the role and the name. So here you have hymn of invocation, colon 655, Lord, keep us steadfast in your love. So all of those can be set, once again, in a global type of setting here under content for your presentation format. And then whether to show stanza numbers or not. So clicking that off and on will just remove the stanza numbers. The liturgy, you would want that visible or not, depending. The content in the liturgy, if it is something that has a melody, you might want that to be shown by default. There's the Kyrie or the setting, so you can make those changes on a global basis. Again, your caption placement. Using symbols for speakers. So if you took the symbols out, then you'd have congregation here instead of just the symbol C, like you're used to seeing. Emphasize decision fields, that's an option. All propers, whether you want them visible, the melody or the setting included, the caption placement, caption format, again, the name, the role, or the role in the name. We've kind of covered those already. Now here's the global setting for chant pointing. So if you want that to show up automatically when you're in your order of service, you can check that box. Maybe you don't want that on there, you never use it. Do you want verse numbers in the scripture readings? You can turn that off if you just want the text, but if you want to include the verse numbers, put that there. Show headings, that is an option. And then here's that global setting for the show the words of Christ in red. So I believe we had well, let's see. Yeah, there we go. So you can see here that the words of Christ in red may, be a little bit harsh on the slide, the background that you have. So you may choose just to turn that off and have it be white text that matches the body text. So we can save this. This is my webinar basic format, completely configured with different colors, different background. I can close the presentation format maintenance screen. Now we're back here to our service. When I click on the presentation format options, you'll see now here at the end is a webinar basic format, and it applies that presentation, that slide presentation format to my order of service. And so as I go down the reel, you can just see how it looks. You can review it, see if you want to make any changes. If you wanted to make changes to this particular presentation format, just go back to your documents view where the presentation format is shown, and you could click edit. That would take you right back to our maintenance screen where we were a moment ago making all those changes, and we can change the color ever so slightly if we wanted to. So that is how you can create your own presentation formats. I just wanted to give you some other views of things that I've done here. I've got a basic format that's a widescreen with color. So that's similar to what we did today. This is a little bit of a darker view coming down here. I've got rubrics in red, please be seated, things like that. Now, there are presentation formats that are available through our Creative Worship series, is something that you can subscribe to. And this is an example of one of those backgrounds that's available. So this is a green background with some color in the headings. Again, I'm not any kind of artist, so I was just giving some ideas of textured backgrounds that are available in Creative Worship. If you're interested in that, I've gone ahead and just created some different lettering. I would need to increase the size of this, but this just gives you another example of what things will look like there. Let me do one other one just to, and I kind of like this one the best, the basic wide with grapes. So this was a Creative Worship background. Let me get to the top here. It gives a textured background to it and gives this little picture here in the lower right corner of grapes on the vine. And so what I needed to do in this case is when it got to a slide where there was text, an element in the service, I had to bring in that right margin so that the wording wouldn't overwrite the picture of the grapes here. So that gives you an example of using those. If we went to document and edit, you can see that I brought in the right margin by 9 inches in this case, so that things wouldn't overwrite. And so that was an adjustment I made for a background like that. So there's some really neat options that you can do with this if we were to use this particular format with the order of service that we did today, our fourth Sunday of Easter PowerPoint. I can then go ahead and export that out to PowerPoint. And we wait just a little bit for that to appear. There we go. We can open that up. I'll slide that over from my other screen. And there's our completed PowerPoint slide reel. Everything, the margins are brought in. It just has a really nice presentation look to it. I can continue to edit here in PowerPoint as well. But hopefully that gives you some ideas of the capabilities of Lutheran Service Builder. Go ahead and close this. I ran a little bit long in presentation. I apologize for that. Let's go ahead and bring up our slide presentation once again. All right, so this is where kind of bringing the presentation down to a close. There are ways of getting in touch with us here in support. You can access our online help center, and that's available through, let's exit out of this, by getting to the letter I in the lower right corner. We covered this in some of the other trainings. Just want to cover it real quick here. You can type in a search term to search our help articles. You can go to the online help center just by clicking on this link. That's what's mentioned there in the slide. I do want to point out that you can also click on start a chat with us during the day, 7:30 to 5 Central Time, or around those hours. And then you can also send us an email just by clicking on that. You can provide a subject to your email and then type in and submit the question that you have. Down here at the bottom is the phone number, once again, that we'd like you to use if you need to get in touch with us by phone. So that's all available here in the lower right corner of Online Lutheran Service Builder. So the online help center, you can access in-app chat. You also got our email address listed there, support@cts.cph.org, and our 800 number, available Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5 Central Time. All right, this completed the third session here, Wednesday session for presentation and presentation formats. I hope you enjoyed it. Thursday, tomorrow, is the advanced session, on My Worship resources and other add-ons. Now we open it up for questions and answers. I'm sorry that once again that we went a little late. I know that Dan's been answering questions all along here. I'm going to take a look at some of these questions. Certainly, if you want to go at this point in time, you're certainly free to do that. These questions and answers will be included in the recordings. So I understand if you've got to leave, that's not a problem at all. For those of you who still want to stick around, that is certainly okay too. And we'll look at some of these questions. I'm going to go to the top here. I'm going to grab a little drink of water. I should say here for the questions and answers, you can type your questions into the GoToWebinar chat. Remember that the recording will be available in our resource center. And if you happen to be watching this webinar as a recording at a later date, if you've got any questions, please send the questions to support@cts.cph.org via email. All right, so going to the top. All right, the question from Reinhold was, how long are services kept online? The past services that you have on your worship calendar will stay there indefinitely as far as we're aware of. Dan had mentioned that to Reinhold directly, but for the rest of you, those will just continue to remain in your history on the calendar there in Online Builder. You can access them and refer back to them and copy them to a newer service in the present day if you'd like. Yeah, but somebody asked here, Gerald, what about alternate tunes for the hymns? All of those hymns, as I explained earlier, have melodies and are created as engravings. So they're image files, basically. It's like a picture file. And so it really is difficult, or it would require that a whole new engraving be made with the optional tune, the alternate tune that you're wanting to use with the hymn. And that's feedback that we're taking, but I'm sure that there is a good number of tunes that could be linked to a hymn, and so it would be difficult to know the most popular alternate tunes that are being used, and it would require a lot of work to get those engravings made and then published. So at the moment, we'll go ahead and take that feedback, Gerald. Thank you. Let's see. All right, June had asked about, does the playlist feature allow you to add 4-part harmony to the liturgy and or hymns? The playlist is actually the audio files. And so that is, the audio files are an actual recording of a pipe organ. It's a separate subscription that you would have to pay for. And the playlist then provides that accompaniment if for some reason you're without an organist or you don't have an organist for a particular weekend. That Concordia organist subscription then would serve as your organist and play those audio files. You would have to have somebody on the PA system, most likely clicking play for all of those hymns and all of those liturgy elements, but that is a subscription, that's an option. And so that doesn't really have anything to do with the 4-part harmony, but I've already explained that during this webinar about 4-part harmony and melody. All right, and Judy also asked, while editing the slides, can you change fonts and locations within the slide? That question again was asked earlier before we covered that in the actual presentation format. So yes, that can be done. Are the prayers of the church inserted automatically for the date? And June, yes, those are. We covered that as well. And Barry had asked if that acknowledgement slide should be used at the end of the live stream service or when it is posted to YouTube. That's a good question. I believe that it should, but that would be a good question to run past our copyrights department. They're the experts of it. If you call 1-800-325-0191, that's the copyrights department, direct number to their department, and they could answer some of those copyright questions that you have. Again, that number is 1-800-325-0191. Good question though, Barry, thanks. Yeah, Gerald asked, can slides be combined if there's room? Yes, they can. You can do that probably best in Microsoft PowerPoint. And Pam asked about the file extension .sstx. That's the format for Media Shout 6. So if you have that presentation software, you'd be able to make use of that file extension, and the presentation that you develop in Lutheran Service Builder will then project through that Media Shout software that you have. All right, very good, Joy. Thank you for sharing with us that your church uses ProPresenter. That's good to know. Julie says that they're on Media Shout 5. They're looking at moving to Media Shout 7. You were hoping that we'd be moving to Media Shout 7 so you could use Service Builder. We'll see, Julie. It kind of depends, once again, on feedback from customers, how many customers we have on Media Shout 7, because it is quite a bit of programming. I think Media Shout 6 to Media Shout 7 changed a considerable amount, and so it would require a lot of time to work out that programming, and so it's just a matter of seeing if there is enough request for it to put in the resources to get that programmed in there. So thank you for that question, Julie. All right, Shirley had a question that I'm not really sure even what it meant, but Dan answered you on that one, Shirley. I'm not familiar with Delore numbers per se, so it looks like Dan was able to help you with that one. Oh, I think, okay, I see what you meant, Shirley, color numbers. Yeah, so there had been some talk about adding the RGB numbers because when we were choosing colors for the fonts earlier, you had to kind of click in that block to find the shade you want. And with web design and graphic arts, there are RGB numbers that speak specifically to a particular color and its shade. And so there has been some talk about adding that. Is certainly good feedback to have. So thank you, Shirley, for bringing that up. Yeah, it would be nice to be able to change color according to that rating. All right, Pam asked about the emphasis decision fields in the content tab. And then just as Dan had answered, those don't appear often in the liturgy, but those are for those fields in a rite that you've added. So that is, there was one slide that I showed you when we added the confirmation rite that was like a placeholder for names, and that's what that's talking about, if you want to include those decision type fields. Let's see, did I just, oh. There's still a number of you with me, so I appreciate you hanging in there during the questions. Yeah, let's see, Pam also asked if you're allowed to, or does Lutheran Service Builder allow you to put the name in place of that decision field or that placeholder for names. And it doesn't within online Lutheran Service Builder, but you can add the names of those in your congregation that you're praying for in PowerPoint. All right, Shirley asks, how do we get the creative worship backgrounds? She has a creative worship subscription. I know that creative worship subscription is a part of bringing in those hymns into Lutheran Service Builder. The digital content, that's a good question. Surely, if the digital content is included, I'm not sure if that's a separate purchase or subscription or not. We'll have to check on that. If you call into our customer service department, I think that they would be able to answer that question for you. But with each quarter that Creative Worship releases services for, there is some digital content that has different backgrounds that you can use and kind of like marketing material in a way, just digital graphics. And so that's a good question. I would, you can also call our tech line and we can find out for you on the support line as well, but customer service or the subscriptions department might be able to answer that question and confirm that with you. We're almost here at the end. Oh, very good question, Shirley. You had asked about how to get that background into LSB. I think Shirley is hopefully still viewing at this point in time. All right, thank you, Kathy, for responding as well here at the end. All right, let's take Shirley's question about how did we get that background in here. Let me drop out of the slideshow. All right, so if we go to our presentation formats, and let me just use the webinar basic format that we kind of worked on during our slide presentation. Here on the left, once again, are those three tabs: style, layout, content. This first one, style, shows the background. This is where we selected that blue color, if you remember that. And then there was the option here of uploading an image. So if I click on that upload button, it then gives me a file explorer, window. And if I've already got some pictures uploaded, which I do, I can go to my pictures library. And let's see, that's a good question of where I've got those. No, it's not there. No, I've got some wallpapers here. I don't know if any of those would work, but let's just say I even have an image. Let's see, some of these are 1600 by 900. Let me just go back. Video projects. Now, let's see. Don't recall where I put those, but let me just go back to one of these wallpaper images that I had. And let's just say that that's what I wanted to use. I maybe wanted to use this background that looks kind of like a starry night. So I can select that image. And again, you would want to make sure that this matches the layout resolution that you have for the monitors in your church. That's the part where I chose the 1920 by 1080, I think it was, resolution. This is going to be a little bit of a different size, so it may not work exactly right, but I'll go ahead and select that image, and it will upload it. Let's see, let's remove the color. Oh, there it is. It just showed up. It took a little bit of time, but here's just an image that then has been applied to the background. So something like this, an image like this could be used during the Christmas season on a Christmas Eve night. It's just a matter of clicking upload, finding the image on your computer. Let's see here. And clicking on that image, selecting it, and it uploads it into Online Lutheran Service Builder, and it gives it the background for your presentation. So that's just a real nice different approach to that. Let's go ahead and save that change. Go back to what our presentation looked like today. It's doing a lot of work here in the background. It's having to change all of those slides. There we go. So you can see here, the slide reel now has the background has changed for all of them. And even with a situation like this, you know, having some of those melodies might be good. And this is where text only might be a good decision to make. Yeah, the melody, I mean, it works. We could maybe work with that a little bit, but text only really works well with those active backgrounds. So hopefully that answers your question, Shirley. Yeah, we could change the heading and the rubrics here in this slide as well. We covered that during the presentation, editing the presentation. All right, very good. I think that's all of the questions for today. We did go a little bit long past the 90 minutes, an extra 15 minutes. So I do appreciate those of you who stuck around. And for those who are viewing the video at a later time, once again, we thank you for viewing the video. And this pretty much concludes then our training session for the day. We'd like to thank you for watching and have a good day.